Hey, welcome guys. Today we are going to finish our Tamiya M36 Jackson. Now we left off in the last video we did the winter whitewash, so the winter camouflage. This video we're going to go really heavy into weathering. We're going to keep it very simple, yet we're going to go into each step kind of in a lot of detail because we don't want to do too much. But we do want to make certain things like streaking grime and the panel line wash. We want to make it really emphasized and to get this vehicle looking nice and gritty. So without further ado, let's flip it over and let's get started.
All right, so we have quite a few weathering products here in front of us. I do use about 90% of these. This is what I gathered thinking about winter camouflage. What I'll do is I'll put in the description a list of everything that I did use. That way you can, reference that if you're wondering what one of these products was. I've also broken this video out, so we're going to start on the interior / fighting compartment. Then we're going to move to the exterior of the vehicle, and then we're going to move to the tracks and running gear. So you might see some of the vehicle is coming along in some of these shots on the outside. It's just the way that I filmed it. I do weather kind of everything all at once. But anyways, enough of that. Starting off with a sludge wash inside. I'm going to use two different streaking grime colors. So I have streaking grime and then streaking grime for winter vehicles. One is a really reddish wash. The other one is really kind of green and slimy. So here I'm putting on a second layer. And using the brush to clean it up with some enamel thinner, just to get, again, some red and some greens and some grime and just accentuate some of these details, but build up a layer of dirt and kind of patina. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take two different colored pigments here, and I'm putting it everywhere, but I'm trying to go really light. Pigments get out of control really quickly, and they get on a lot of stuff. So we're going to put these two colors in sort of different areas, obviously close to each other. This will just generate different tones of dirt, and it will mix with the grime underneath as just other layers of dirt. And when they're dry, we're going to use a dry brush to basically push them into details, break them down so they're not, just sitting there like sprinkled on dirt. Although that can be a good effect as well. And then we're going to come in with some pigment fixer. Enamel odorless thinner also works. What I found is the pigment fixer sometimes can leave a wet effect. And since we're doing a winter vehicle and the inside of the vehicle would be warm, I decided to give that a shot. Most times I don't like when it dries and still looks wet and shiny. But in this case, I thought, hey, it's a good thing if that happens. So we'll see later on in the video if we're able to achieve that. Then what we'll do is we'll come up to the fighting compartment or the turret here, and we're going to do the same exact weathering that we just did on the base. I'm going to do two different types of streaking grime as panel washes, and then we're going to use those same two pigments. We'll be a little bit short on the filming here because, as you can tell, it's hard. It's really hard to get a good amount of filming done within the fighting compartment. So I did my best. Forgive me. But we'll do plenty on the exterior of this vehicle. So it is interesting, though. The fighting compartment has a lot that you can weather and a lot that's still reachable. But then we do have these side walls of the turret that are going to remain very green. I was able to, I unfortunately couldn't film it, but I was able to get some streaking grime in there to just kind of break it up. But it is definitely one of the bigger challenges of this is how do you weather the vertical surfaces inside this fighting compartment? Because on the left side, there's a lot of room to do it, and on the right side, there is not. So really interesting challenge. If you are planning on doing some weathering, definitely something to look out for, and something to kind of think about and just plan for. Once we get those pigments down, just like we did on the inside, we're going to use some pigment fixer. And I'm going to try to be somewhat careful with the placement of this. I want the pigments to sit, obviously, in the recessed areas. I don't want it to look super, super dirty, but I do want it to look like, people have been climbing in and out of there. Next up, we are done for now with the interior. There's one more step that we do at the very end, but the interior is not super, super visible, so we're not going to concentrate too hard on that. What we are doing now is we are using this is our streak and grime for winter vehicles. And again, just like the inside, we're going to use this as a panel line wash on the outside of the vehicle. This with the white camouflage, this green slimy color, I think just looks absolutely perfect. It's a home run. You're going to get your panel lines are going to look really, really dark and accentuated, and it's going to leave this green slimy color. So once we have that and all of, covering all the details in the recessed areas, I'm coming in with this is a pointed brush, soaking it in enamel thinner, and you can think about removing it in two ways. If you blot the wash with a loaded brush full of thinner, it's going to blend the detail. It's also going to carry any extra thinner back into those recessed areas. And then, as I'm doing here, you can wipe it away and try to clean up the area fully. So I try to use kind of all of those all at once. The blending and wiping away and blending and wiping away. Some areas are going to be easy to blend, like the left turret here, the turret hatch, not turret hatch, the two hatches on the for the drivers there. Those you can't really clean up fully. You're going to have to do a lot of blending. So both methods, very, very useful on a vehicle like this. And they end up looking very, very good when they're kind of done together. So same thing as before. We're going to soak our brush in enamel thinner, and we're going to do our best to clean this wash up, while also leaving it around these little bolts and these different things. So here's a look at the two different streaking grimes. You can see one is very, very kind of green and gray, and the other is very, very red. So we're going to take the green one now, and we're going to do some vertical streaks. And no real secret to this. I would advise using a thin brush and trying to go kind of as straight as you can. The only reason being is that sometimes this product does leave a little bit of a residual effect behind, but as you can see, I'm not too worried about it. And then we can leave kind of streaks of different lengths. Ultimately, it doesn't always really matter. What matters is, at least in my mind, is how we remove them. So instead of working from the top to the bottom of the streak, I prefer, as you see here, to work from the bottom up. Pretty much the bottom half of the streak is just going to disappear into your brush, but we're going to use it as a way to work up, if that makes any sense. I think it's probably easier to try it yourself than to explain it. But if you start at the top, what is going to happen is you're going to wipe away the entire top half of the effect, and you're going to be left with a lot of effect at the bottom, and it's going to kind of spider web out. What we want to do is we want to keep that streak in as perfectly straight of a line as we can. The effect that we're going for is that, rain carried some dirt vertically down the vehicle, which means it's going to probably be doing it in a pretty straight line, and probably a pretty tight line, because it's going to find, the most, I guess, vertically pleasing route. The nice thing about the streaking effects is you can remove them as much as you would like or as little as you would like. They're very, very controllable. Now, once we let that dry, I'm going to come and do a dark brown wash on our stowage here. Now we did the stowage in a darker color than I think we usually do. So once we remove this wash, which we will do with a Q-tip here, we're going to have to come in and we're going to try to lighten it up just a little bit. But I like the Q-tip method in this case. I know we used a brush and we went really, really carefully on our panel line wash. On this, we want to kind of smear this wash around. I want this bag to look just dirty, right? Get that patina look to it again. Look like dirt has been, these bags are getting thrown in the dirt and everything like that. Once that is dry, we're going to come in with our original field drab color and a little bit of white, and we're going to do some dry brushing of the highlights. And so while I do that dry brushing, a really, really good trick that I learned and that, happy to share, obviously, as I'm doing here, but I would recommend you trying on something like this. That enamel line, the enamel panel line wash I used on the stowage, that'll stay wet for 2 or 3 days, to the point where if you were to dry brush this, even a day or two later, you might start moving that wash around and you might not get the effect that you're looking for. If you take a quick spray of Tamiya's TS80, which is their matte clear coat, which is what we would use before this, it's going to lock that panel line wash in. It's going to dry in about 10 to 15 minutes, and you'll never be able to move that panel line wash again. Now, you need to be really sure that everything underneath is set to your liking, because again, you cannot go back in and fix it. But that is one of the ways that I move quickly through this, and I don't hear a lot of people say that or ever acknowledge it. But when it comes to the streaking effects, if you want to do multiple colors, you would have to wait days, if not weeks, in between. And this allows you to do it kind of later that day. Anyways, tools, we're going to do a quick dark brown wash. And as you can see here, just work it around the tool. Try to remove it really slowly after it's dried for, an hour or two, and get kind of that wood grain effect. But going back to the TS80, you can use that trick at any point. And I often use it when I'm really happy halfway through my weathering and I don't want anything to change. Now, at this point, I have sprayed it with the TS80. I did it, like I said, after the stowage, after I removed that panel line wash with a Q-tip. So all of the green streaking effect that we have done is frozen on the vehicle. It cannot be changed or altered at this point. And that's going to be really important in a second here. As you can see, I'm putting these rust effects. I have 2 different ones, both oil brushers. I'm putting a lot of them in the same spots that I put that panel line wash earlier. And that's done for a reason. It's just going to further accentuate these details. And it's also going to give them a rusty undertone. And then we'll get to the rust streaking in a little bit. I've found the best way to use these oil brushers is to really soak them in enamel odorless thinner. Oftentimes don't even dry them on a brush. You want to remove as much as possible while moving the brush as little as possible. Oil paints can spread like a wildfire. And once you spread them, people say you can remove them. You can only remove, in my mind, about 99% of them, which is, as you can see here, we have all these very slight reddish orange marks on the rear of the vehicle there. That's after a lot of enamel thinner, and you're going to see my paper towel at the end, how much of these oil products we end up removing and how much still stays on the vehicle. It's going to stay on like a little bit of a haze. So we want to make sure that we're not pushing this around the vehicle too much, or else, especially in this case on a white vehicle, you're going to end up with a big reddish orange winter camo, and this is what we're looking for on the back. Very happy with the way that turned out. Not too out of control, but definitely enough to get the point across. And so same method here, just soaking the brush in thinner and basically just blotting it where we have these rust effects. You can also think of it, yes, like the blending, but you're also making a wash on the vehicle. So you're putting your thick paint down and then you're coming in with your brush soaked in thinner and you are, touching that thick paint and it's going to flow into the recesses. That's really what you want, that and to blend it. Then once we have that settled, we're going to come in with our streaking rust. To be honest, these products are not different at all. I've used both of them interchangeably, and I haven't ever noticed a difference. So you do not need two. I just ended up getting two. But we can use different areas that we put rusting effects on earlier to kind of figure out where we're going to put these vertical streaks. So obviously we don't want every single thing to look rusty, but it is a really good looking effect on this white camo. And so same exact thing as we're going to do with the streaking grime that we did earlier, but these oil paints are they're going to be a little bit harder to remove, but in a good way. I think you have much more control when it comes to the oil brusher streaking effect versus the one that we painted on with a brush. It's also much harder, I think, to lose the top when you do the oil brusher. And it gets a nice natural flare out kind of at the bottom, right? It stays nice and tight at the top and it kind of triangles downward, which I think is a really, really nice looking effect versus, again, the enamel based product. Then we'll come in, we'll do the same thing to the turret here, or fighting compartment, whatever we want to call it. I know that's more the correct terminology, but I'll always say turret. And we'll take a second to look at our results. And I'm really happy with the way this turned out. Obviously, would a vehicle rust this much in real life? I don't know, probably not. Although you do see quite a few tanks that are sitting outside that do get rusty. That could be from obviously years of sitting outside, but we're taking our artistic license with this one because it looks cool. Then we'll come in with our two pigments, same two that we used on the inside of the vehicle. I chose two darker colored pigments. I like the winter soil because it's going to match the mud that we're going to do later. And then the Golan earth, or Golan earth, I don't know how you pronounce it. But that's more of like a kind of classic dirt color. So that'll keep things from getting too dark, but also, keep things still in that kind of muddy kind of range. Because if this vehicle is in the winter, it's not going to be around a lot of dry, light colored dirt. Probably going to be around a lot of mud from these vehicles, churning up the frozen ground and finding mud underneath, or during a thaw or something like that. Then once that pigment is on the vehicle, we'll come in with our dry brush again, and we're just going to work this into the crevices and kind of work the volume out of it a little bit, if that makes sense. Again, you can certainly use pigments without the dry brushing part. I just think that this tones them down to a degree that they should probably be toned down. I will, as you'll see here on the kind of front fenders, I will leave them a little bit, well, I guess we'll call it volumized. You'll see like a couple little sprinkles there. I'm not going to go too crazy because that is an area where, maybe some dirt has fallen down onto or whatever, has splashed up on. So that'll give us kind of two different effects there. Then we'll come in with our pigment fixer, as we did on the interior, and we will blot that around pretty much everywhere that we have put pigments on this vehicle. Again, you can use enamel odorless thinner in this case to achieve the same result, but we're kind of using what we're using. And then we'll come in here, and I have, this is a oil brusher that's fuel stains. And we have 4 different areas to put gasoline in this vehicle. So just to kind of give it a little bit more visual interest, what we're going to do is we're going to blot this around, and then with some enamel odorless thinner, we're going to basically thin it out and kind of blot it into different areas. Then we'll do a quick track wash. So this is the same track wash I've used on basically every single vehicle I've ever done. It's just a reddish, dark brown wash. Won't go too crazy into it, but this will be basically one of 2 steps that we use on the tracks. This is going to give them a slightly dirty, slightly rusted type of effect, and again, just keep them from looking super, super clean. Then we'll come in with 3 different kind of earth products, I guess. 2 of them are the splash products from Ammo by MiG. And this is the way that they're supposed to be put on. With an airbrush, I have it turned down to like 18 psi, and I'm blowing it into the wheel well. I don't know that I would ever do this again. It is really, even at 18 psi, even with that brush damped on a paper towel, it's really hard to control. Like really, really hard. I guess it did do a really good job of getting volume in there, but I don't know. I prefer the old cocktail stick or toothpick method. Any overspray, we can take our same kind of streaking effect brush and work it downward there. And as I hinted at a second ago, we'll get back to our old brush and toothpick method. We're going to start dark, and we're going to work to the lighter color before we go in and use the mud effect. And so this actually took me, this was over the course of a couple days. 1, these enamel products take a really long time to dry. 2, I thin them extra. I find they work the best when they're about 50-50 thinner and product, because they're really thick out of the jar. But they take, at that point, then about a day to dry if you use that much thinner. I'll even go thinner as I am on the tracks and the running gear here. I go probably 70 to 80% thinner. And then these products just become a wash. And we can work them into, you can pretty much just paint the underside of the vehicle, and they will not cling to the raised surfaces, and they'll just kind of fall into the recessed areas and give us a nice finish that way. And same thing with the tracks. But as you can see, we're getting a nice kind of 3D buildup on the inside there, which is what we're looking for. Even though the bottom of this vehicle is very open, because of those flared out sides of this vehicle, they're very, very difficult to see. It's only if you tip the vehicle sideways, or I guess upside down, that you're going to see any of this. So we're not going to go too crazy. And then after a while, I wasn't happy with the volume that these products were leaving. So I took a little bit of that winter soil and mixed it in with the thinner and the turned earth. And same method, but we're just going to apply this really to the rear of the vehicle. Not that, you know, and I know I've talked about a couple of real life scenarios in this video, but I'm not always going for realism here. But it is most likely that any of the dirt accumulation or mud accumulation on a vehicle would be at the back, where those tracks are kind of rolling upward and spraying mud and dirt that's been carried up from the bottom. So what we tried to do, and even like 5 days later, you see the back is still drying. My patience wore out, and I just wanted to get this done filming and get it posted. But you can see we really concentrated on the back versus the front. And then I think this was 2 or 3 days into me waiting for it to dry. My palette was still completely wet and I was a little bit bored. So what I did was water down that effect even more and basically take it to the inside, where, if you remember at the beginning, I said I wanted it to look a little bit watery, and it didn't. Of course, the time I wanted it to, it didn't work. So we're just going to basically very lightly tap that on the inside to give us kind of some wet effects. And there you have it. If you made it this far, I'd obviously thank you for watching the video up to this point. If you have not already done so, I would ask you to please like and subscribe to the channel. And I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I really enjoyed building this kit. I haven't done a winter whitewash in a really long time, and I miss it. I kind of feel like doing another one already, although for the sake of doing something different, we will do just that in the next video. Probably the next couple videos. But really fun kit. You know, I had some problems with the tracks. There were 1 or 2 moments that didn't quite feel like, hey, this is Tamiya's brand new kit. The majority of the moments did feel like, hey, this is Tamiya's brand new kit. And even more so, at times it didn't feel like a Tamiya kit. And I mean that in a good way. It didn't go together in 2 days. This is not a weekend build. This is something that you're going to spend a lot of hours on, at least compared to other Tamiya kits. You might not spend 50 hours on it, but you might spend 30 to 40. And I might have spent close to 40 to 50. So really amazing kit. The subject matter just steals the show. The Jackson is just so cool. We get such awesome options to do, you know, the traditional olive drab, or if we want to come in and we want to do a winter whitewash. Just really cool. Even with its flaws, I would absolutely recommend this. This is some of the most fun. It's some of the most frustration I've had from any Tamiya kit, but it's also some of the most fun I've had when it comes to weathering, which is something that I kind of get bored of. I don't love weathering. It's kind of where modeling starts to slow down for me. Not in this case. This was a really good subject to weather. So the other big thing, chipping fluid versus Ammo by MIG's washable white. I don't know that I would ever use the chipping fluid again, if I'm being completely honest. One, you have to obviously paint it olive drab. You then have to spray the chipping fluid on, wait for that to dry, which is only like an hour or so. But then you have to spray the white. You have to let that dry, and then you have to be there, you know, within a couple of hours to remove it. That's a lot. And you have to really do it with an airbrush if you want to do it well, in my opinion. The washable white, one can just be brushed on and then just removed with water with honestly relative ease. You don't even have to brush it off. All you have to do is wet it, and the gravity is going to work for you. 1,000 times easier than the chipping fluid. I think more realistic looking. I went for kind of a less chipped up version. Yes, I did a lot of rusting and other things to this, but I didn't want it to look super chipped. And really happy with the way that it works. And again, you could apply it with a brush and it just kind of fixes itself. So honestly blown away with that product. I'd used the washable sand and dirt before, but really happy with the way that that product works. If you haven't used that product, I would definitely recommend it. It's pretty cheap. I think the old bottles before the Atom colors came out were like $3, like $3.80 or something. Just enough interior this kit that, you know, it really lends to the vehicle overall. I love those shell casings and those canvas bags hanging down. So let me know what you think in the comments. I would love to hear what you guys think. If there's anything else that I could have done, what part of the video you liked most, or really whatever you want to say about it. If you've built this kit and you have different experiences with it, let us know. Again, I thank you guys for watching. We'll leave you with the tank for a little bit here, and we'll see you on the next video.